Isn't there that realization, like at some point in your life, you see these people we idolize, right? And we start to learn they're not perfect, right? And everyone's dealing with something. And I do think that in this day and age where we put up personas, we have social media, we, Photoshop things and and everything. We kind of always put ourselves on that level of competing, on that level of comparing.
Mhm.
And that leads to some level of doubt, of unhappiness, of depression. And I think that that's a big trigger for a lot of people that are suffering out there from both health conditions and just suffering on a day-to-day basis of just symptoms of unhappiness, which truly is a symptom of some. How do you work with people to get past that? Because we live in a world that is superficial. We live in the
Mhm.
world where we are constantly comparing ourselves, where we want more, more, more. What are like your first steps to try and work through that as someone that is an expert in performance in this body, mind, spirit understanding?
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot there to unravel, and when I really look at the first step to take with anybody, it's
Mm,
finding grace within yourself and finding grace within your life, because grace is this concept of simplicity. It's this concept of more doesn't necessarily mean better, right? Bigger doesn't necessarily mean better, and so when you work with high level performers across the board, their life is extremely complex at times, right? You've done well in life. You're moving all over the place. You got a family usually, and how do you take a step back out of that to look at yourself, right? How do you stop filling up your calendar because you're running away from the emotions that you need to deal with? And everything in life is emotional.
mhm.
It starts with the belief, and that belief becomes an emotion. And so you know that better than anybody. And so when you start working in this lane, in the vein of performance, the vein of relationships, the vein of love, every single relationship in your life is a greater opportunity to find love within yourself.
Is that where you normally start
Yes.
when you're looking at things from that perspective of helping individuals find love? Start with thyself.
You have to. You
Yeah.
have to. Because there's no way for you to love anybody else if you don't love yourself, because your relationships are just a reflection of who you are.
Yeah.
Right. So when I'm judging, or when I have expectations, or when I'm fearful, or I don't like this person because of their hair, or I don't like this person because they said this, it's not them, it's you. It's you. Let's just get honest and get clear about it. But let's find out why it's you. Let's find out where that's coming from. And I can guarantee 9 times out of 10, it's not coming from you as an adult. It's coming from you as a child. It's coming from a parent. It's coming from, uh, when you're in high school and something happened to you, it's coming from that. And so when we incarnate into this body, the first 7 years, that's where all of our genetics are turning on. That's where our DNA is starting to fire and wire. And if there's things that happen during those 7 years that turn off certain parts of who you are, you go into your adulthood living that same life, right? Living those same emotions. So that's where we start. We start on the emotional side. And usually the number one thing that we do to open up just anyone, because this is why it's changed my life and why I decided to get certified in it, was breath work.
Mm,
Right. And I know you met my buddy Curtis, and he's the
yeah.
one who introduced me to it, Curtis Lee Thomas. And it changed my life. And there's no faster way in 30 minutes, 15 minutes, that you can get to the core of an emotion, or the core of an understanding of why you're feeling what you're feeling, than to breathe. And
Mm.
it's why our world is so stressed. When you look at anybody who's stressed, that's angry, that's upset, and you just watch them talk, they don't breathe.
Mm. And
There's,
we always shallow breathe, right? When you're in a
yep,
sympathetic nervous state, which most of
exactly.
us are, fight or flight sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
Shallow, less oxygenation, the blood, everything
Exactly.
starts to crumble, then fatigue, all these other things, right? And it
Yep.
just keeps cascading down. Is that also where you start with a lot of people? Because there's lots of places you could start, emotional, breath work, like, and it's got to be a holistic viewpoint. But
Yeah.
are you always throwing that in the front and center of people? Like, how are you breathing? And let's get you to breathe better.
Yeah. It depends on kind of the situation we're dealing with in the very
Yeah.
beginning. If someone's closed off, or I see that they're not able to realize their own shit, excuse my French, right?
Uh-huh.
And I know that in order for them to get past the reality that they've created, the perception that they created, then we'll do a breathwork session. And after that, when the heart is open, the heart can do anything, right? But it's when the heart is closed off that we have trouble trying to pull this out. And so when you're doing traditional therapy and you're wondering why it takes you 10, 15, 20 sessions to work through something, it's because you're not actually going into your body. You're trying to get the outcome externally, where the inside is where the outcome comes. It comes from the inside out. It's kind of like the chi, or the vitality in Oriental medicine. It's right. You have this prenatal chi, which is everything that's inherent in you, inside of you when you're born. And then you have this postnatal chi, and you feed off of your environment, you feed off of your foods and your liquids. But when you don't have enough prenatal chi, that's when the postnatal can take over. Right. And
Right.
so we just need to reinvent and revitalize that chi inside of us.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to be said about these points you're hitting on, whether it is the emotional, mental portion, which so many, disregard,